Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Sure IDC podcast, the show about anything and everything. This is Lucas, and let's see what topics we can get into today. We talk about movies, songs, video games, board games, food, books, personality traits, animals, history, anything and everything you can think of. So sit back, relax, because we're just here to have a good time. Help! We all need to come together right now and just let it be known that something happened yesterday. Here comes the sun, and I want to hold your hand, and then I will know I feel fine. Obladi oblada, in the strawberry fields forever, twist and shout. Is it becoming too many? I can't put them all together. But yes, you might have guessed it, but in this episode we are talking about the Beatles. We're going to talk about their music, movies, and then we might even talk about if they have aged well or if they're somehow became overrated. To have this conversation with me, I have a very good friend and old roommate and new guest to the podcast, and that is Jesse. How you doing there?
Well, how's it going? Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, well, you are very, very welcome. Very welcome. That was kind of a long intro. I apologize.
No, I thought you nailed it, man.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. You know, sometimes it's just you gotta do stuff like that. You gotta do it.
You gotta do it. I mean, it's full send. There's no half-hearted. You just gotta full send.
Full send. You know, it's awkward, but whatever. You know, just
dude, you gotta do what you gotta do. See,
you know,
it's like you just gotta look at. You gotta say, sure. IDC.
Sure, IDC. Sure, that's exactly what this is about. Exactly what this is about. So, I mean, I always like to point out that they can see us. They can see me. They can see you. Whoa, it's crazy. Woo, you can see us.
Oh my gosh.
So this is a new thing this season, of course, that I've been wanting to do. I really want season 4 to be, you know, more video heavy episodes. So there you go. I've done it. I'm here right now recording video episodes for you as listeners and watchers. So
technology's amazing.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel that they can see you? How do you feel that my two followers could... I'm just kidding.
See, the best part is you don't even know. You can only see from my torso up. You don't even know if I'm wearing pants.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. I mean,
I'm great. I'm loving this.
Half the time I just put on a nice shirt and I'm like, my hair's fine. Even though it's
what do you think that everybody did during COVID when everybody was working from home?
That is true. That is true.
Literally just dress torso up.
I mean, you know, tie, button-up shirt, dress coat, top hat,
pajama pants,
and then pajama pants. Yeah.
That's just the way to do it.
Or no pants. I mean,
or no pants. Whatever you guys do, whatever floats your boat.
Just don't forget and stand up. I mean, that's.
Well, see, I'll spoiler alert. I am wearing shorts, so you won't have to worry about that for me. But I just like to, you know, I like to throw curveballs every once in a while. You know, what ifs?
You should have left us in suspense. Like you should have been like, I'm not wearing pants.
Editing. No, I'm kidding.
And then like every so often like attempted to get up, and then people like,
Just sit back.
We are PG friendly here, folks.
PG friendly. Indeed.
So, Beatles, like, about them, like, you know, I guess they're one of the most popular bands in all of history. Like, I mean, you know, I guess they're known worldwide. I guess they're, you know, good and, you know, people know their music and stuff, but like, but tell us a little bit about, I guess I should kind of do some backstory on this. So I've been wanting to do this episode for like 3 seasons, no joke.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I only wanted to do it with you because, like I said, old roommate, you had the Beatles posters on the wall and stuff, which I'm pretty sure you gave to me, and then they got all sticky from tape, and I had to throw them away. So I apologize.
That probably did happen. It's okay.
But of course, it was like, we don't need to talk about how long we've been out of college. I mean, it's been...
Oh, dude. Oh. Well, hey, for me, it's been longer than you, though, brother.
Yeah, that's true. Amen to that. So anyway, so you were a big Beatles fan back in the day. You, of course, are still to this day. What is your experience with the Beatles and kind of their music and stuff?
So I guess it starts, my Beatles origin story, if you will, starts back, I guess, whenever I was like probably 10. My parents, I was raised in a very, very, very religious home. And a lot of things, if you know anything about the Beatles, especially back in the 60s, John Lennon made a specific he made a joke. It was a joke. It didn't come off as a joke at the time. He said something along the lines of that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus, and that sparked a lot of controversy. So in my very religious home growing up, I wasn't allowed to listen to the Beatles because my dad remembered those comments that John Lennon had made, and I was not allowed to listen to them. Now, my grandma, however, introduced me to the Beatles whenever I was about 10 or 11, and at the time, it didn't take. I wasn't in. What 10-year-old is gonna sit and listen to an album all the way through? I
True.
just don't know of it. So, but I heard, the first Beatles song that I remember hearing was actually a song that Ringo sang on the Abbey Road album. Shout outs to Abbey Road.
Boom, 1969.
Yeah. So that was the release date, just so you know. But
The Abbey
Road
release date?
The Abbey Road release date. That's at least the album. So, the first song I ever heard by the Beatles that I remember hearing was "Octopus's Garden." It was the song that Ringo sang on the B side of the original vinyl, and it was one of those songs that I heard, and like I just remember singing it periodically throughout my childhood, just because it just stuck in my head. It's a catchy little riff ditty. I'm a big fan of George Harrison's guitars in it, but it's just one of those things that always kind of drilled. But the thing is, I didn't know it was the Beatles at the time. Like my grandma, because had I known, because I had a big mouth when I was a kid, so I would just tell everybody everything. Like I remember like I would go to like a friend's house, and my mom would say, "Don't watch that movie," and then I'd go, "Okay," and then I'd go over there and I'd watch the movie, and then I'd instantly rat myself out because I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. But so, my grandma never told me it was the Beatles. So she had the vinyl, she had the record, and that's why we would listen to it whenever I was a kid. But it wasn't until, I guess, years later, I think I was 14. No, I guess I was 14. Whenever I first picked up a guitar, my mom and dad got me a guitar for Christmas. And
you like played the Beatles.
I started playing the Beatles. And
your dad was like
Well, see, I just remember because the thing is like I remember one of my other friends brought. We went on a road trip, and he had a Walkman. You remember Walkmans? That's how old. That's how old I am. Walkmans. He had a Walkman, and
you're not that old, but yes.
Oh, come on, man! I feel old. My knees. If I stand up at any point, not only will you see the shorts that I am wearing, but you will also hear my knees pop in about 7 different places.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm old. Or at least I feel old.
Uh-huh.
But so he had a Walkman, and he had earbuds. And he had one earbud, and he would give me the other, and we would listen to the Help album, which is another album that I'm very fond of. But I remember, like, again, I had a big mouth, and I remember at the end of the road trip, I asked my dad, I was just like, "Hey, do you like the song Help by the Beatles, Dad?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's a good song." I was like, "Well, would you let me listen to the Beatles?" No. Okay. Okay. Well, fine. So I just had to continue listening in secret on my buddy's earbuds. From his Walkman CD player that would skip every time the van would hit a bump, and it would, just kind of the way it was. But yeah, I guess that was my origin story, really. And then it wasn't until I started actually getting pretty fluent in guitar that I started to appreciate more and more of their music. And now at that point, it just because there came a time whenever I was just like, okay, full send. I'm just gonna listen to them anyways, and I did, and whenever I told my parents that I was listening to it, they just didn't seem to care as much anymore. So
yeah.
I went off from there. I went every at that point I was working at a coffee shop, and I got paid every week. And every Friday, whenever I get paid, the coffee shop that I worked at was right across the street from a Walmart. And this is right whenever they released all of the Beatles CDs, the remasters in 2011. And so I was going to that Walmart every payday and grabbing a new Beatles CD every week, and until I had them all, and I still have those to this day.
Wow.
So never looked back after that. I guess that's the origin story though. So there's the to make a to make a long story longer.
Make a long story longer. Yeah. Hey, that's all that's about. Yeah, I mean that's a great origin story to listen to. Or have listened to a band. I feel like it's kind of maybe not the original or the classic, but like you're banned from listening to it, but yet you still listen to it. And and it's
really,
just like,
I think another thing. I think another thing. It's just kind of, and I know this is probably going to be how later on, like how the Beatles kind of just like make me feel. But like to this day, like I still think back about that because my grandma, she's passed, but like I got my name from her. Her name was Jessie as well, and it was my mom's mom, and like some of my fondest memories are like going to her house and like listening to the Beatles with her at her place. Even though I didn't really listen to, again, what 10-year-old listens to an album. It was just on in the background, but like, we'd be in the kitchen doing something, or we'd be putting together a puzzle and we'd have the Beatles on or something like that. And it was just really cool.
Nice. So, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Fondness of memory, Rest in peace, Grandma. I love you.
Yeah. That's awesome, and that's a great story. That you can carry on the rest of your life, and every time you listen to the Beatles, you'll think of that or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Mine, is very not that exciting.
And those, I find that people who always say that always have the more exciting stories.
It's not exciting. it's really not. So, my dad, I don't have a musical, preference, I guess. I don't like.
Okay.
Like me myself, I do not say, oh man, of course I really have musical preferences, but like I did not find music myself. Like my preferences came from other people.
Fair enough, yeah.
My mom, big country person, she likes, Keith Whitley, George Strait, all the country,
Yeah. Old country though.
Old
country's
country.
Good country.
Oh yeah, of course.
We can appreciate the old country.
Not the new.
Not this garbage that comes out of Luke Bryan's mouth. That's what I'm sure. Oh no! I just said a bad thing. What have I done?
Oh no! I'm gonna get canceled.
Oh no!
And then my dad. So I guess I'll save that because that kind of leads because that's a good. Anyway, so then my sister. My sisters. I have 3 of them. They listen to all the new stuff. So from Backstreet Boys, NSYNC to. Okay. To Michael Bublé, Lady Gaga, all that. Like that was the reign supreme era. So of course I got all that, and then I feel like actually some of my musical preferences came from Jed Duvik as well.
Good old Jed. We love Jed.
He's been on the episode. He's been on the show many times. So
he's a homie. He's a homie.
Love him to death, but he definitely has infiltrated my musical preferences. But my dad, he was a big oldie person, so not just the Beatles, but like the Monkees and Mamas and the Papas and all those people. So he was big on that, and so of course it was very rare to get in the car, and if my dad was driving, it was oldies. If my mom was driving, it was country. And so we listened to a lot of that. So the Beatles were a big part of my childhood, and I just kind of grew up liking them and respecting them and just enjoying their music. Of course, do I ever, if you were like, Lucas, do you sit down and listen to the Beatles often? I'd be like, no, sorry.
Yeah.
But do I, when I was doing research for this episode, I was, of course, doing like a good researcher does and listening to the songs and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was like, dang, I forgot how good these are. Like,
yeah, they have some golden. They have some golden songs.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why they.
Right.
Reason why they are who they are. So.
Yeah.
Let's talk about their music a little bit because there's kind of a lot to boil down. I mentioned a lot of songs in the intro. Hopefully you can count them all.
I don't know if I can count them, but I can remember the intro.
But, everyone has at least heard of the Beatles, right? Everyone has. Like I said, they're one of the biggest known bands in history. And you correct me if I'm...
the face of music.
They really did. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they started in like the 60s, like 1960. I think is when they formed in that. It's kind of in months debate about like when they actually like met each other and started talking and singing together. But like in reality, the band formed and they started doing songs in 1960. And that was, of course... You already mentioned him, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harris, you mentioned, and Ringo Starr. So those are the four known to this day. And really, of course they had a couple songs. I mean, they just don't become a one-hit wonder overnight. They don't become a sensation overnight. It did. I mean, they started making music, and then I think if my research was correct, their first single hit in the UK was about a couple years later, and then became the number one hit in the United States after that, which was "Love Me Do."
"Love Me Do" that was their first one.
So.
Yep. And so, little known fact about "Love Me Do": did you know that in the single version, it's not Ringo Starr on the drums?
That's not trippy at all.
Yeah, isn't it? So the Beatles actually they had a studio drum on that because for some reason they just didn't like the take that Ringo took whenever they recorded it all. So there was the drummer, the fifth Beatle that they called him for a little bit, but his name was Pete Best.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, so Pete Best was actually the drummer on "Love Me Do." So
it was probably
there's your first random tidbit of the night.
It was probably a. I mean, do you feel? I don't want to jump ahead or anything, but I do kind of want to talk about it as well. But do you think that the Beatles had more drama than any band ever?
It's definitely especially later in their careers. Yes. In the twilight of their, because if you go by the number in the 1963 is their first album release, right? So they formed in 1960. So really, for a band as big as them to only be a band for 10 years, because they broke up in 1970, and even really, if you want to get all nitty gritty about it, you could even say that they unofficially broke up in 1969. But I could probably get behind that because there was a lot of drama going down the stretch of their career at the end of 1967, 1968, and to the end of the Beatles. There was a lot of things that went down that tore them apart as individuals. But I think part of that was just their growth on an individual level.
Yeah.
But again, that's to be expected,
Yeah, that's kind of how it is with bands. It's like.
Yeah.
They start a band, get well known, and they're like, "Hey, I'm well known.
I've got a following already." And so if I go out and say, "Hey, I'm the old frontman for this band, follow my solo project," follow this, follow that, and so that's kind of what happened with the Beatles, because there was a lot of things that went down the stretch. But Paul McCartney had recorded a solo album, and they hadn't yet released the "Let It Be" album yet, but he wanted to release his solo album, and the record company that they formed, Apple, was like, no, we can't do that, and then that caused a lot of tensions within the group band, and it was just a big old mess.
Yeah. That's, and just when you think about the Beatles, you think about the music and everything, and if you're a true Beatles fan, you kind of know all the drama and everything that happened with stuff. But even then, even if you're not a big Beatles fan, you kind of know maybe rumors or false, maybe half truths, stuff like that. Yeah, just because it was such a big thing. But yeah, it's kind of they're one of the bands that has the most drama out of everyone.
Especially, yeah, like I said, later in their career, especially heck, not very many band members, like George Harrison's wife divorced him and then married Eric Clapton. And he introduced the two. So, it's just, that's drama, and then the whole John and Yoko drama,
yeah.
And then the Linda and Paul drama. It's just... And then Ringo's just like, I just want to play drums, guys. Let me play drums. Please let me play drums.
And then they didn't let him play drums. They're like, we didn't really like how you do that, Ringo.
Yeah. There's actually a couple different songs in the Beatles library, and I'll tell you more about that later. But there's a couple songs that Ringo is not the drummer on. And there's a couple of them.
Didn't even let him do what he wanted to do.
Well, he was kind of throwing a little bit of a temper tantrum at the time, so they said, "Well, we still got to record." So,
well, yeah. Would you consider them a boy band?
I would consider them probably
the first.
Yeah, well, if there's anything, yeah, that would have to be, because up until that band, so if you look at a lot of the band names from those early days, it was an individual's name followed by for instance, Jerry and the Pacemakers. Okay, so Jerry, this is Jerry, and these are the pacemakers.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, it's Elvis Presley and, you know, his entourage.
Yeah.
Or, you know, all these other people, you know, Buddy Holly. Stuff like that. Like, it was just a lot of bands that had, like, Rory, you know, Rory and the Hurricanes, which is the band that Ringo was actually drumming for a while before he joined the Beatles. But, like, it used to be just, you know, it was individual's name and then followed by the accompaniment, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the Beatles, I mean, they were the first group that, instead of, like, they unified under the same persona, they all had the same haircut, you know, they all had the suits and the ties and all that stuff. So by definition, yes, they are a boy band. But if anything, I do think that they are probably one of the first to at least go under a name kind of like, because I mean, you think of boy band, I think of like NSYNC, I think of One Direction, you know, I think of like bands like that, and like the Beatles, you know, they didn't have Paul McCartney and the Beatles.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. They didn't have Lennon and the Beatles.
So before they settled on the name the Beatles, the one that they spelled it with the B-E-A-T, they used to be called Johnny. One of the names that they toyed with and went under for a while was Johnny and the Moondogs.
Johnny and the
Moondogs, and then they were called the Silver Beatles, but it was the B-E-E-T-L-E-S, like the bug.
Mm-hmm.
And then they eventually just settled on the Beatles with the B-E-A-T-L-E-S.
Is that the British version?
I mean, it might as well. They do like their E's and S's instead of Z's and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't really think about the Beatles. Like, what does that mean? Like, what did they think of? Like, did they think like car beetle? Did they think of animal beetle?
No.
Did they think of like why the Beatles? It's like,
you know,
I know we should be called the Beatles. Like, who thinks of that?
And I don't even really know why to this day. That's one of the things I guess I just haven't really looked into is like the origin of the name the Beatles.
You mean there's not an interview floating around out there that Paul
there
someone's all like, hey.
But it's just one of those things. I just don't know. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
I have a Trivial Pursuit game that is all the Beatles, and no one will play it with me
because no one knows enough.
No one knows enough.
Okay, so instead of looking it up, I want you to go to that game and search the cards and see if that question is there. Why did they choose the Beatles?
Goodness. Okay, hang on a second. Here we go. So, according to the Beatles publicist Derek Taylor, the name came from the 1953 movie The Wild One, starring Marlon Brando. Brando played Johnny Strabler, a member of a motorcycle gang whose rival gang, led by the actor Lee Marvin, was the Beatles, but it's the E-E-T-L-E-S. So that's where they came up with at least the Beatles part, but then they just threw an A because it's music and it revolves around a beat. I guess. I don't know.
Oh, the Beatles. Oh. I mean, seriously though, that is mind blowing. The Beatles.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things. It's like, you know, is it the downbeat? Is it the up Beatles? Is it the down Beatles?
The down Beatles definitely is.
Is it the reggae Beatles? I don't know.
The reggae Beatles. Yeah. So anyway, we haven't talked about the music yet, but we have. But so what? I mean, I guess we can talk about some other songs types, but I guess to start off, let's talk about their style of music. I mean, what would you consider, you know, their style? I mean, because I guess anyway, what would you consider it?
So it was like they used to have a genre of music, and it was before rock really became a thing, right? But it was called skiffle, 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 and it was just a guitar. They had like an upright bass. Sometimes they'd play like a washboard with it, kind of sounds like hillbilly music almost. Like they had they just use whatever they could, right? So they had like an old trap kit, and you know, they would just that's because, you know, the Beatles, the first time that they played together was in the back of at least with Lennon and McCartney, was in the back of an old Ford pickup. Not a Ford pickup, I don't know exactly, but it was the back of an old pickup. And
Ford pickup.
Ford pickup, man. Ford strong, brother. But
the back of a Ford pickup, they say.
That's the most American thing I've heard today. but yeah, so like, you know, it's just like but like, so they didn't really have a whole lot to play, but like they just knew how to play like certain different little things. But like, you know, the way like originally it was just 3 guitarists and a drummer.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way it was. So really, it was kind of limited as to what you could play. But the genre that I think that they were defined as in the beginning, in the earlier years, was called skiffle. And it's like a mix of like folk music, blues. It had some influences of like country, bluegrass, and like some jazz stuff mixed in with it too. It's kind of like it's a weird like. It's like you take all those, throw them all in a blender, hit start, and you just watch it all, and then this just comes out, and you're like,
"That's beautiful.
What is this mess that I'm in love with?" You know.
I would say you don't. So, you. I mean, especially in that time period in the '60s, you can't. I mean, but that's the same thing. Like, you can't really think of other people that did that style of music, but then you so can. Because I think, obviously, the Beatles started doing it, and then people started mimicking that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
100%.
Look at the Monkees.
Exactly. The Monkees, Mamas and the Papas, you know, all them that have that kind of feel to their music. But yeah, I mean, there's just something about the style that you're all like, this isn't pop? This isn't like classic, like, this isn't... I don't quite know what this is, but you're right. They do have like the washboard, and they've got the banging on the drums, and you know,
especially in the earlier years.
Yeah, I think they also really focused on, you know, not only like you said 4 guitars and a drummer, but they were like, okay, so we need that, but I think the main thing that we need to focus on is harmonizations. You know, using our voices as. But I mean, at the same time, like. Were they all really that good of singers? I mean, there's a reason why Ringo was probably a drummer.
That's a good reason. Yeah. So I mean, well, like in the earlier years, again, back I keep saying that in the earlier years.
Yeah.
Like this is before, you know, Ringo was even around, right? Because, but like, you know, they didn't have that. So like, George was too young to play in bars. So like, they had to lie about his age to get him into bars. But like the way that I guess that they would have to, because really, if you look at, I think John wanted to be the lead singer. That was just his mindset, because it was his band, right?
Yeah.
This is my group. I'm the lead singer,
mm-hmm.
And all that stuff. And then Paul comes along, and John's like, okay, maybe. And then Paul sings, and he goes, maybe we can kind of share it a little bit. And then George comes along, and George was the kind of the quiet. He was he was kind of the quiet type, but he could still sing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what set them apart from. Now, given vocal harmonies, I think they were still. I mean, they were already developed, but in that style of music, they weren't very utilized. If you like, you know, a lot of people didn't use them, kind of like that, kind of like the Beatles did. But but again, you roll the dice and you get lucky that you have 3 guys that can sing, and then Ringo, who could still sing,
yes.
But it was his own little, like, you know, he was his own little entity. Like, whenever, like, you have, like, a song that's sang primarily by Paul, typically it's John or George harmonizing, and it's the same way with all of them. But when Ringo sings, only Paul could really, their voices could still flow together, because Paul, if you listen to the Beatles category, his voice changes. He can change his voice, and it's just so awesome. But, like, yeah, I think that's one of the things that. I think vocal harmonies are a big part of what set them apart.
Yeah.
I mean, all of "Love Me Do." There's only one line in "Love Me Do" that doesn't have a harmony line over it.
Yeah.
And it's just at the very end, whenever Paul just goes, "Love me do," and it's just that's the very end, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know. So like that's like that set them apart, in my opinion. So I think as far as the music goes, though, I think skiffle is the way that was defined until they later on became more of a rock and roll, which was a dirty term, you know, back in the 60s.
Rock and roll. But it's not the rock and roll that we think about now.
No. We think of rock and roll now, we think of like 80s hair metal.
Isn't that weird?
I used to like 80s music a lot more than I do now. I just don't care.
I mean, I still like 80s music, but
it depends. There like 80s music is good, but I just don't like 80s hair metal. I used to be like big into like Bon Jovi and things like that. I just not anymore.
Yeah.
Just don't care.
Yeah.
I still like Journey. Journey's still good.
Journey's just Journey's Journey. So
yeah, exactly. Anytime you can't have a gathering without "Don't Stop Believing" coming on the radio.
Seriously. So what about different albums? You know, we're gonna kind of get to songs, but of course the big thing are the albums. We've already mentioned several. The Let It Be album, Help, A Hard Day's Night. Even Yellow Submarine and Magical Mystery Tour, but talk a little bit. So and I'm not that big of a Beatles person, like I said. I mean I am, but like when you're like, okay, what was the fifth album or fifth song on the A cover of the Help? And I'm all like, I don't know, Help.
Help! Literally, help! Please, help!
So it's kind of like I don't really know like exactly what songs are on which albums, but there had to be like a form of improvement on the albums, or maybe like a certain flow with them. Maybe they are maturing, they're becoming better artists. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think a lot. You look at they're just the production level of their albums, especially over the years, just changed because like you look at so they recorded their first album, Please Please Me, that was their first English UK release. They recorded that in like 25 hours, and it was 24 hours straight. Jeez. Like it was 25 hours in the studio. They just hammered out every single song, just got them all done. And the last song on that album is Twist and Shout, and that song, as you know, a lot of people have heard Twist and Shout. That song on John's vocals was they saved that song for last because his voice, it destroyed his voice, just destroyed it whenever he would sing that song. And so they did at the very end. They had the whole album done up until the very end, and they had just Twist and Shout left, and they did it or whatever. And they're like, no, let's do another take, and they did 3 different takes of Twist and Shout, but they ended up using the first one because it destroyed John's voice so badly whenever he was, because that's a very, if I don't know if you've ever tried to mimic John Lennon's voice in that song, but it is raspy and it will just mess your vocal cords up. And like you can sing it melodically, but like if you're trying to get that like original, like you want to try and sing it as close to that. If you're trying to sing it like John Lennon, have fun. Like, get some hot tea and some honey afterwards because you're going to be downing that like crazy because it's just it. But so that's how they did it in the beginning, right? Their production level was just, hey, we only have the studio for this amount of hours on this day, so we need to hammer this out and get it done. And then whenever that became a hit, they go, okay, hold on a second, we can do this. So they went to London again to record their second album with the Beatles. And they didn't have a time limit that time, but slowly they're building up. So and then you have like their third album, Hard Day's Night. They just every song, and then you can tell like if you listen to like Please Please Me, like the first track is I Saw Her Standing There, and it starts with a Paul McCartney count. He goes a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just you hear the whole band come in and they're just doing their thing, and that was done in 25 hours. Then you have the next album. That slowly but sure, it still sounded similar to the first, but then if you go to like their 4th or 5th album and listen to that right after listening to their first album, you can think, oh wow, this is the early years, and this is them slowly maturing, and then go on to that. Like if you listen to I Saw Her Standing There, and then you switch over and listen to like Maxwell's Silver Hammer from like Abbey Road, like you wouldn't think that they're the same band. Yeah. That's how different they are because they just evolved, and I think each one of their albums you can hear that because as you said they're becoming more of independent artists because that was kind of they were kind of doomed to fail in a sense because they knew where they were and where they were wanting to go, and they were kind of all just taking that ride together. But as they started to go, their paths just started to kind of split up. And there's a lot of the earlier songs, like, you have John singing and then Paul singing, and they're singing together, but then, like, you'll have a song that's just John, and that sounds so different than a song that's sang by just Paul. And, and then especially, like, as it goes on, like, and it really started to divvy up, in my opinion, was the Rubber Soul album, which is arguably my favorite album of the Beatles. But, like, you could tell just how different they were because, like, a Paul song sounded completely different. A George song sounded completely different. And then you have Ringo, who's just like, I'm just happy to be here, man. Let's just keep this going. And you know, but even Ringo had some songwriting credits that were phenomenal. Like he was, but as their career went on, now I want to say there's 13 albums in that short of time. That's a lot of output. And for a band to be forced to evolve that quickly, there's going to be some changes and some adaptations that have to take place. And as they grew as artists, that just kind of became the way it went, you know? So I think that's, I mean, as far as the progression of their albums, though, is the main thing you can tell is the level of production and then the individuality aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, you said that they started in 1960, ended in 1970, but really the golden age, the Beatlemania age, I guess, was between 1963 and 1966?
66, yeah, because they stopped touring in 1967.
Just cold turkey.
Yeah, they finished the tour and they said, you know, we're not going to do this anymore. And by that point, they'd already made all their money, and they were, you know, already dealing with taxes. they learned at a young age.
Oh, those taxes.
Yeah, those. Well, they actually have a song. It's the opening track on their Revolver album where they call out the government for the taxes. It's actually kind of funny.
That is funny.
But you know, they just don't like the tax man, as he's called. And but you know, it's just like that point they said, well, we want to continue to evolve as artists. And then the child that came from that was, if you go from listening to Revolver and then you listen to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, they are two completely different worlds. And you can just, it's like, what are they, what is this? Why is this happening? So different? Yeah. It's just like, it's insane. It's like you walk into like a room like with like smoke and mirrors and like everything's just changing. You're like, you were just singing Love Me Do. What's going on? Hello?
Oh my gosh.
It's like, you know, it's just because again, the level of so they stopped touring, but they've said we're going to stop touring to put more emphasis on our music. And then that's what they did. They became different personas. They took on the whole role of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And that sparked a lot of controversy too. It's just, you know, drama. And
so what was their last album?
The last album they released was Let It Be.
Let It Be.
And it was released in 1970.
That was it.
But by that time, the band had already broken up.
Is that what Let It Be's about?
I don't know. I don't really think there's a whole lot, because if you listen to Let It Be has a lot of songs that were like just old rock tunes from whenever they were kids. Mm-hmm. Some of the first songs they learned, like there was a couple like drinking songs that were Liverpool, because they were you know, they're from Liverpool. England.
Yeah.
And so they but they had like a lot of like drinking songs, like a lot of bar songs. Like they have a song called One After 909 was just a song that they would sing whenever everybody was drinking at the bars after getting off work, back in the early, you know, 60s or late 50s, you know. And there was just silly things like that, but they also have a lot of original music, you know. They've got, you know, like really good songs on that album. Like Across the Universe is a really, really big one from that album.
Yeah.
Obviously none bigger than Let It Be.
Yeah. How, I mean, you probably don't know this like to a T, but like how many songs are there? Hundreds?
How many by the Beatles?
Yeah.
Oh God, they go underneath that persona of the Beatles. So it depends. Like if you're counting like official releases, like so if you're looking like songs that were released on albums.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, it's got to be close to 200, I would say, because that are just under that persona of the Beatles. Now later on, after post breakup, there was a 3 CD set came out. CD, you know, CD. You remember those little discs?
Ooh, yeah.
Remember those?
Yeah, they would get scratched all the time.
Yeah. And you could put them in a Walkman. Hey, let's go. But you know, so but then they came out with what they called the anthology, and there was Anthology 1, 2, and 3. Anthology 1 covered 1960 to like 1963 to 64. Then Anthology 2 covered 64 to like 67. And then Anthology 3 covered like the rest of 67 all the way to the breakup. And it was just a bunch of unreleased like demos, a bunch of unreleased songs. like just them just idle chit chat like in between songs. Like there's a lot of them. Like there's one like where they're starting to like they count in or whatever, and he's like, hey, can I get more? I want to get more of the in my monitor. I need to hear more in my monitor of the piano. Can I get some more piano in my monitor? And they're like, yeah, hang on. So and then like you hear Paul McCartney in the back, and he drops a tea glass, and it shatters, and John just starts like making fun of him. And it's just like he's just like, Paul's broken a glass. Paul's broken a glass. I can't believe he's broken this glass. Why have you broken this glass, Paul? And he's just like, shut up. just like just like that relationship that they had. Like it was unreleased stuff that nobody had heard, and that wasn't released until like the I want to say it's the late 80s or 90s.
Wow.
But like if you count those, oh god, those had like 70 songs apiece on them. So, like, I mean, that's 210 by themselves. So I'd say, if you're counting unofficial and official releases, I would say probably close to 400 to 450 songs.
That's a lot of songs.
That is a lot of songs. Now, given the anthology had a lot of, like, demos and, like, takes that were never used.
Yeah.
So, like, hey, like, here's an instrumental take of Eleanor Rigby. Or, hey, here's just the strings from Yellow Submarine. Mm-hmm. Here's just stuff like that. Or they've got like completely different renditions. There's other songs that they recorded on that and for that anthology album that were just they just were takes that they didn't use and they just threw them all on there. But they recorded one song one way, and then the version that made the album was completely different. So the first time you hear this one, you're like, this is a new song, and then you hear the vocals kick in, you're like,
this isn't a new song.
This isn't a new song. I know this song. And it's just like cool to hear that, like that different perspectives and things. Again, that just goes to show, hey, Paul wanted it this way, John wanted it this way, Paul's way won out this time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, we've mentioned, talking about the music, we mentioned so many songs and everything. I mean, it's just Eleanor Rigby, Help, Yellow Submarine, Let It Be. There's so many. I mean, I'm missing at least 100. We could just. Let's just list all of them right now for the next hour. But what I mean, what would you say is your favorite song? And maybe, and if it's not, and what is the song that speaks to you the most if it's not your favorite song?
So, favorite song. I knew this question was.
I warned you. Just saying.
On its way. I know you did. And the thing is, I spent all day at work today thinking about this.
Oh, really? Wow.
I really just came to the conclusion of, I don't know. Now I could give you like a top 5, and they're in no order. Like I don't know if that works for you.
Yeah. Give me a top 5 in no particular order, even though there is an order. Just saying. No, just kidding.
Don't tell anybody.
Pretty much the first one he says is his favorite one.
Oh, no, don't do that. Well, then now I'm going to say my least favorite one first.
Oh.
No. I don't know.
Got you to catch 22 now.
Right, yeah. Okay, so I think number 1 on this
all right, top 5, no particular order.
The Jesse top 5 of Beatles songs. It's going to start with probably a song from their second album, which is with the Beatles, and it's a song called All My Loving. And I love that song. It's one of my favorite songs. Like, it was not one of the first ones that I ever heard, but just like, it's very upbeat, and like, I love that song. Just it's a Paul is singing the lead vocal, but it's a phenomenal song. I'm a big fan of that one. I think second, it's probably going to have to be, and again, this is the only Ringo song on this part of the list, but Octopus's Garden, the one we've already kind of talked about, just for the pure nostalgia of
which
it.
I've never heard.
Oh, it's got a beautiful little guitar lick in the beginning by old Georgie Harrison, and it's gorgeous, and it's a kind of a weird song. I guarantee you, if you listen to it, you'll have heard it somewhere. It's been used a lot in like film and movies and stuff, but that one probably purely just for the nostalgia of like my grandma and I used to sing that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Let's see. Third would probably have to be Get Back. I'm a big Get Back fan.
Get Back.
And I think and if you listen to All My Loving and then you listen to Get Back, and they're both sang by Paul, but it's hard to tell unless you know that it's Paul. It sounds almost like two different people.
Yeah.
So that's that's 3. Oh God. This is so hard. Yeah, and this is a cover song, but I was a big fan just because of how they got to cut loose on it. It was a cover. To be honest, I don't even know the original artist. That's just I'm a terrible person.
Wow.
I should know it. Oh God, I'm the worst.
The Beatles were the original artist.
Hang on a second. I'm gonna find out. The original artist was. It was. Oh, I should have known this. Oh God. Oh God. So it was a Little Richard song.
Oh.
The song was called "Long Tall Sally."
Long Tall Sally, yeah.
Long Tall Sally. I freaking love this song. It's because just get to hear Paul just cut loose. Like vocal wise, he's just insane. It's just so much fun. Like front to back, it's one of my favorite songs. And it's just high energy all the way through. Not a single break in it. It's just everything is just high octane from the second they start, because it starts with just Paul like just borderline screaming, and then it just breaks in. It's just chef's kiss kind of song.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's that good.
That's pretty dang good.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good. I'm a fan. So that's number 4. I don't know. It's so hard.
You've got the last one on the top 5.
The last one of the top 5 in no particular order. No particular order. And see, I haven't even said one from my collective favorite, my collective favorite Beatles album.
Oh, there you go.
So I think I'm gonna pull one off that one though. So the last one I'm gonna pull for this one is gonna be a song called "In My Life." It's more of a somber, kind of sad-esque song. John wrote it. John Lennon lost his mom really young. She was killed in a car accident, and she wasn't in the car. She was struck by a car on the sidewalk, and she died that way. And but John didn't really. He lived with his aunt a lot whenever he was younger, but he wrote this song from the perspective of that. You know, he still loved his mom, and he's like, no matter what, how far you come for how far you go, you know, it's kind of just one of those things that's there's places and they have their moments, but you know, it's no matter how many things you love, you're still gonna love the things you loved whenever you were, you know. You know, you're always gonna have. There's always gonna be a special place in your heart and your memory for certain things, and I think that's gonna be my number 5.
Oh, hello there. Sorry to interrupt this conversation, but we talked forever, so I broke this particular episode up into 2 parts. Now, Thanksgiving is just around the corner, so I'm going to have to do something drastic, maybe even unforgivable. I'm going to have the Thanksgiving episode in the next 2 weeks, and then I will do part 2 of the Beatles conversation 2 weeks after that. I know, making you wait that long? 4 weeks for part 2? How scandalous of me. Sometimes it's just the way the cookie crumbles, and yeah, so gotta wait 4 weeks. Sorry, but thanks for listening, stay safe out there, and remember, you don't care.